Hi, everybody. Janet Eichorst here, and welcome. Today, I want to ask you if you personally are open enough to whatever sort of change, shifting, ways of being that are better than you could have ever dreamed of. And not only are you open to that, are you paying attention enough that you don't miss it when it's happening and you can enjoy it? This is important right now. Why? Because we are still in this, I will call it a super accelerated state right now. If things are changing very, 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 very quickly. And it's interesting because we've all talked about manifestation for a long time. And I know for myself, I've kind of put a lot of things in the field, and I always try to align that with my soul, right? Like what my soul really, really wants to experience here. And I got choices, right? I got choices. And so I'm always kind of contemplating that and paying attention and putting things in the field. I use declarations. I use affirmations, and the way I use them is to feel what it feels like to have the results that I want to experience. This isn't new for anybody here, I am sure. And what I'm asking you today is, can you receive? Can you shift as quickly as you can shift, as you are able to shift? Because there's just incredible things happening right now. And for me, if I'm not paying attention enough, I miss them. And let me just give you an example in my life. I like to travel. I've always liked to travel. And I get to have extraordinary experiences when I'm on the road. I get to meet people. I get to be in nature. That's one of my absolute favorite things. And so, I've been sitting with this and taking trips, and I look back, like today, I look at the incredible summer I've had so far, the number of trips I've taken. And what I don't want to miss is how incredible my experiences have been. I have been with people that I absolutely adore and love. I've loved on them. They have loved on me. And this has happened. I've taken and had experiences and trips at least once a month. And right now I'm preparing to go on the road again. And and so this idea of like, I've been putting this into the field about travel and how it's easy and how it's effortless and how I get to spend time with extraordinary people. And it's happening. And I don't want to miss how amazing it is. And this sequence of events that I'm in right now, and by the time this comes out, I'm recording early because tomorrow I'm getting ready to hit the road again. And what happened was in March, I found out that a friend of mine who lives in Italy is going to be in the States. And I already had a bunch of stuff planned this summer. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I'd really like to see her, and I don't know how that's going to happen. So I've kind of loosely been holding this, and when I speak with her, it might come up, it might not. And, I've considered whether or not I need to make plans, and it just hasn't been the case. Well, I have a trip to Indiana this month to see my family. And that trip was longer than I needed it to be. So I finally thought, "Ugh, I just need to shorten it." And it has to do with airlines and direct flights. And I prefer to fly direct, but the airline only flies a couple times a week. So finally I thought, all right, the universe needs something to work with. So let me take some action. So I started looking at options, and lo and behold, I was able to relatively easily change my flight. So I'm not going to be there long enough, as long as I was going to be there. And so what that did is it opened up a window between like now and that flight later in the month, that trip later in the month. And a friend of mine is talking about going to Shasta. She's like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, huh. Because my human never would have considered that I had enough time to get to Shasta and back in that window. And especially because I'm not taking my dog to Indiana, I'm flying. And so if I go to Shasta, I need to take my pup with me. And it doesn't feel right to have her be with a sitter for that period, be back for a week, and take off again. So my human never considered that it would be possible for me to go to Shasta. But my friend, here's the universe working its magic in the background, right? My friend's like, "Do you want to go?" So I just start taking action and checking into it. And lo and behold, I'm headed out to Shasta tomorrow. And that's where my friend who lives in Italy lives. So my trip, I get to see my dear friend, and I get to be with other friends, and I get to be in Mount Shasta. I haven't been there in years. And so this is an example of how I loosely held this intention. I took action when I was guided to take it. And then lo and behold, it's working out beautifully. And because this is a last minute trip, like literally, I think it was 3 days ago when I started looking into this, I've had a lot of stuff to do, change appointments, move stuff around, get here and do recording so I can be with you guys, right? Because this is important to me, right? So, wow, the universe worked its magic, and I'm going to get to take a trip that's unbelievable to me that it kind of just got put in there. And I don't want to miss the fact of how quickly and how simply this all happened with a lot of moving parts. I mean, we're talking all the way to, having somebody water my plants out on my front porch, appointments I had scheduled for me and my dog. I mean, just all kinds of arrangements that had to be taken care of. And it happened. And I want to talk a little bit about how being and doing is a little bit different, or a lot different, than it used to be. And this trip planning and this is really a good example of that, because it used to be that the way I planned required more thinking. And it's not that I didn't have to think to make all these arrangements. And it was more in flow. Right? It's like, oh, this. Like, I had no idea that shortening that trip to Indiana would open up this window, and then all this other stuff kind of happened on the back end of that. Like, my human mind couldn't have conceived that, right? It was more just following those breadcrumbs that we've talked a lot about, those of you that know me and have followed me throughout the years. And it's more of a state of being. And I want to say the same thing, too, around receiving and being open to miracles and to things shifting very quickly, because the whole manifestation process is so different. Things can happen so quickly. In a breath, my whole state can change. The way I'm experiencing and interacting with people can change. It can be very quick, where before it felt like there was more of a process in it. It's like, oh, this would be really nice. There was more thought involved. And now it's more about allowing that soulfulness, that consciousness, that pure consciousness to work through me, as me, In my mind, my ego, those parts of my human don't get in the way. And it's more of a flow process. So it's just incredible what's happening now. And I don't want you guys to miss any of it, right? The other thing too is, we've all kind of looked at expectations throughout the years, right? Through our evolutionary process, our ascension process, whatever you want to call it, right? Our growth cycles. And there was the trip before this one, I spent a long weekend with some people in Prescott where I used to live. And as I was planning this trip, a friend came in from out of town and we went to Prescott and had a long weekend in a big group of people. And before the trip, I really worked on not having any expectations. And I knew that there were going to be people there. Some I'd never met in person. I had just been with them online on Zoom. And some of them I knew. And I lived in Prescott for 25 years. So I know a lot of people in Prescott. And so with this particular trip, I didn't have any expectations. So I had that level of curiosity. I had that level of, oh, let's see what's going to happen. And I was pretty relaxed about the whole trip. And so my friend and I, who came in from California, we were laughing because it got to be this running joke about, oh, this is better than expected. Now, mind you, we were outside and listening to people speak, and it was hot there, right? And so I was concerned about that. I was like, are there going to be mosquitoes? I don't know. So there were some reasons to be concerned, and I just kept wiping the slate, not having any expectations, knowing that me would show up, and I just gave myself permission to do whatever it was that I wanted to do in any given moment, whether I wanted to participate in these group activities or whether I didn't want to participate in these group activities. I could have stayed in my Airbnb the whole weekend if I wanted to, watching Netflix, right? So I gave myself that level of permission. Now that, wiping the expectations, being present to myself and what's happening in every now, right, to the best of my ability, allows that pure consciousness to move through me as me. And that's how these miraculous moments, the synchronicities, the organizational brilliance of all that is, works. Because me, my little human, my egotistical essences of me, parts of me, don't get in the way. And so, yeah, the whole thing was better than expected. And with this trip I have, to Shasta, so I'm going to go hanging out in Northern California and go to some places with my friend who lives in Italy that I hadn't been before. And she lives in that area, so she really knows the area well. So I am really excited. I haven't traveled with my dog in this way for this length of time. So it's going to be, a new experience for she and I. When I went on grid work, working with land last fall, I was shocked at how well she did staying in hotels. She was amazing. So I don't know if she's going to be amazing on this trip. I hope so. I ended up booking some really cool Airbnbs that I think will be perfect for us. I'm going to get to camp a little bit. So the prep for the trip was really more than normal because I'm preparing to camp, I'm preparing to stay in a hotel, and I'm preparing to stay in Airbnbs. And I'm going to leave tomorrow at some point. I got a probably 9-hour day ahead of me driving because it's kind of far from here to Shasta. So back to this whole idea about what I wanted to bring forward today. Are you detached enough from the circumstances of your life to shift, to change, to be neutral, to be passionate when you need to be passionate, but where you're staying out of your own way? I always want to stay on that sweet spot of that wave. where I can appreciate it, really recognize what's happening. And if I'm kind of going through, a period of my life on a trajectory, things are happening where I'm not enjoying myself, I can do something about that, right? And we know this. We've practiced this on this podcast series. We can take our time, get recentered, take those moments that we need, because that God force energy is always here. Higher vibrations. It's another way of saying it. Life force energy, mana. So let's take a few breaths together right now. And you, take a moment to open yourself up to receive all the goodies, the miracles, the synchronistic events, the ideas about how you want to spend your time, abundance. Open yourself up to abundance on all levels. That's relationships, that's money or whatever you use to exchange for goods and services that you need to live. That's love. All these different forms of love that we can receive. All these experiences. Open yourself up now. That's the invitation. You can let yourself live in a field of synchronicities, miracles, unconditional love. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to feel stuff. You probably are, right? Because we're in human bodies. We have emotions. We have levels of uncomfortability, especially, I know for myself, as my body continues to upgrade, and I'm talking vibrationally, there's uncomfortability. And I can still be in that field of miracles, in that field of synchronicity. I mean, I've given you several examples here of how I'm in that field, whether I know it or not, because I continually do what I need to do from a self-care perspective, from an energy management perspective, so that I am setting the conditions for these extraordinary experiences of life. And then I take the time to really appreciate them, to pay attention what's happening. And as I need to make adjustments here or there, I will. If I'm not spending enough time, whether that's doing or not doing, then I make adjustments. And for me, I gotta look at avoidance, because I tend to, my past has been avoiding uncomfortable situations or doing things where I might be uncomfortable. So that's part of my normal, just self-reflective process. Because when I do those uncomfortable or risky or scary things that are in alignment with my soul, amazing things happen. It's always been worth the risk, right? And sometimes I need to talk with other people about it just to get a reality check to see if it's really in alignment or not. Because sometimes my mind tries to play tricks on me, and it does. And sometimes I believe those things that aren't true, right? So that's why I practice self-reflection. And that's how I set the conditions for me to live an extraordinary life. And that's whether I'm going through an uncomfortable period or whether I am just breezing through. That's no matter what, right? And that's a phrase I use frequently because I like it, right? No matter what, I'm going to show up and I'm going to really set the conditions for living an extraordinary life. So much love to you. I hope that this summer, or whenever you're listening or watching this, I hope that you're on a good run of it and that you're really able to appreciate all the amazing things that are happening in your life. Please like, please subscribe, and please share. Bye for now.